So let's bring our next storyteller, Stephanie.
Joaquin was sleeping in my class. Again. He meant no disrespect by it, and I knew this because every time he would come into the class before he fell asleep, he'd be like, "No disrespect." And sometimes he would follow it up by, "It's not like you're boring or anything." And then he would tell me that today he was going to try to be awake. And then I would look over to him to give him the thumbs up, and his head was fully down on the desk with just the little crown of his hair showing. My maternal great-grandfather came over because the Russians were convinced that he was his older brother. His older brother was of the age for conscription, and conscription is the polite term of what the Russian army used to do when they would kidnap minority kids and force them to go to the front line to fight their wars. Crazy that in 125 years the Russians are still on the same bullshit, but that's for another time. So my great-grandfather was not 18, but his older brother had just turned 18, and so the Russian officers came to get him, and the family had him hidden and basically scraped up money over a year to send their kid to America. And so then the Russian army came back, and they were like, "Oh, he's not here, he's gone, we don't know where he is." And they were like, "That's him," at this little 14-year-old. And so then the family hid him for a year, and after he turned 15, scraped enough together and packed him off to America to find his older brother and hopefully make his way. Joaquin was sleeping yet again, but he stayed awake long enough on this day to actually write a very short version of our required 3-paragraph essay entitled, "If I Could Meet Anyone, Alive or Dead." Joaquin's essay. If I could meet one person alive or dead, it would be Keanu Reeves. I would choose Keanu Reeves because he is Neo, and Neo knows all the secrets of the Matrix. Since I would like to know the meaning of existence and the meaning of the Matrix, I would like to meet Keanu Reeves. I would also share these secrets with my family and friends so we would all know the real meaning of everything that goes on in our lives. This is why if I could meet one person alive or dead, it would be Keanu Reeves. Joaquin's 3-paragraph essay was 1 paragraph, but it was good. And that's when I had a possibly very mistaken epiphany. I can't tell if this is one page or not. When my great-grandfather arrived in New York, he had to figure his shit out pretty quickly. He and his brother met up, and they fell in working an excellent scam with some sailors. When ships would dock in New York, the sailors would want to spend as long as possible on shore before they had to ship out again. So usually the first or second night after docking, they would remove all the rope off of their ship because the higher-ups were gone. They would trade it to my great-grandfather and his brother, and my great-grandfather and his brother would give them really crappy frayed rope. And then the sailors would rig the crappy frayed rope on the ship. Then they would all party and do their thing for a week, and when it was time to head out again, they would go to the captain and the higher-ups and be like, "Oh my God, look at this frayed rope, like we're all gonna die if we use this, the rigging is super messed up, we need to get all new rigging, we have to stay here a few more nights." And the captains and higher-ups would be like, "Oh my God, you're right." And then one of the sailors would be like, "Actually, I know a guy who I think can get us a good deal." And then they would go to my great-grandfather and his brother, and they would buy back at a slight premium their original rope, re-rig the ship, but get another couple of nights docked in harbor. And the ship would get re-rigged, the crew would get their extra days, and everybody was happy. Freaking genius. On the day that I gave the graded essays back, I asked Joaquin to stay after class. This could not have been a surprise to him because he was failing literally every single class. He may have been pulling a D in one, but I think you didn't get credit for Ds in CPS at that time, so you had to have a C anyway, so he was failing everything. I waited until every other student left the room, and I told him when we were alone, "I'm gonna ask you something. You don't have to answer me, but if you do, I am not going to tell anyone your answer." He nodded. "Joaquin, Are you undocumented? Joaquin's face went pale, and he looked like he was about to cry, and his face crumpled, and then it just opened up again and went dead. He wouldn't look anywhere near my eyes. Finally, I heard this small voice coming out of the floor saying, How did you know? And I told him, I don't know anything, but I can tell you why I think that. Do you want to know why I think that? He eked out a, yes. Joaquin, you sleep through my class every day. Nobody sleeps through my class. But you sleep through everybody else's class too. But you're also kind and polite, and you never do anything like cruel or malicious to anyone. You sleep through lunch. When you're awake for like 7 seconds, you make some good jokes. You never turn in a single assignment. And when you finally did, it was clever and silly and deep all at the same time. So while I know also you must be exhausted and you might have some other things going on in your life, I had to ask myself, why does this clever, funny, kind, deep student not bother to try it all? And so my best guess was you saw nothing for yourself in education after this. And since we know we have a lot of options for students that have similar difficulties, I had to figure it was because you felt that all these options we have wouldn't be applying to you. So I tried to think of a reason why you might think that. And I think it's because of this, you come in and you very respectfully do not try at all. Joaquin nodded and his eyes welled up and he said, I'm just going to keep working nights like I do now forever, so it doesn't really matter, you know? The shipping companies started to get wise to the ploy, and they started weaving a different color segment into the ropes of each of the different companies' ships. My great-grandfather and his brother found another cool refugee who had been there a little longer, knew the ropes, so to speak, and apparently had an incredible gift for removing any knot and very hard-to-reach things. I don't know if it was her nimble fingers or her willingness to save their scam, but she and my great-grandfather really hit it off. So my potential future great-grandmother wove similar colors into the knotted bunches of the crappy rope, and the sailors could still keep their extra days ashore. I asked Joaquin the next day if he remembered when the speaker from Northeastern University came. He didn't, because he was asleep. But he was like, I remember seeing on a poster that a speaker from Northeastern was coming. I told him that Northeastern and actually several other colleges around the Chicagoland area actually offer scholarships to undocumented students. Joaquin's face lit up in disbelief. Can I get one? But you're failing literally everything. Like, I don't even know if you're gonna graduate. But are you cool if we talk through some options with your parent? Joaquin agreed, and after a tearful conversation with his wonderful mother, he and I agreed to meet up again. The scam was going so well in New York that my great-grandfather and his brother were eventually able to bring my great-great-grandparents over to America. Apparently, my great-great-grandmother did not like my future great-grandmother, who was great with knots, and made her empty the bedpans when she came to stay with them. And I'm like, bitch, do you know what this woman did for your son's career? And, you know, the kids got married anyway because they don't listen to anything we say. Joaquin came to our meeting and outright asked me almost immediately if he would graduate. Do you think that I can do this? I looked him in the eye with all the hope and compassion that I could muster, and I told him, I think it's really unlikely that you're going to turn all of this around in 2 semesters. You have almost a year and a half of doing absolutely nothing. Your highest grade is a D-, and I'm amazed you even got that. His face fell, but it didn't fall all the way. And so I told him, I'm willing to try if you are. Like, if you really are. Joaquin and I designed a plan with his guidance counselor. He spent free periods and an hour every day after school in the computer lab doing online courses for extra credit and replacement credit for the last year and a half. And this was 12 years before it became super cool for everybody else to do remote learning. I didn't want to get Joaquin's hopes up. I didn't want to get my hopes up. But he did it. Every single day, minus like 1 or 2, he was awake in my class and everybody else's class. He was awake in classes for so long that his classmates eventually stopped the jokes about finally knowing what he looked like from the front with his eyes open. And do you know how long it takes 17-year-olds to stop making the same joke? It takes a long time. He wrote more hilarious essays, and on the days that he wasn't in the computer lab, he occasionally slept through lunch, but that was it. Eventually, as my great uncle liked to put it, the jig was up. The shipping companies had the rope makers weave the colors either into a giant mass at the center of all of the rigging or do hundreds of individual threads throughout each rope. So even my future great-grandmother's fingers were no match for those weaves. And the brothers started selling tires. Joaquin graduated. I still sometimes don't actually believe it happened, but it really happened. And to this day, I know it was probably one of his mother's favorite days on earth, but it is still one of my favorite moments as an educator and as a human, watching him walk across that stage. We let him walk early. He still had a couple credits to finish up to fully graduate, but he was on track to finish them by the end of the summer, which he did. And so, of course, we had him walk at graduation. He had to work throughout the whole summer, though, to bring some of those admittedly amazing, now high D pluses up to low Cs. And no sailor has ever done more to pursue high Cs than Joaquin. My great-grandparents went from tires eventually to selling used and some new furniture. And their kids worked in furniture too, as well as other odd jobs. And they also smoked too much and destroyed their marriages and some of their children's souls from the inside. The trauma didn't disappear, but like every year it lessened a little bit. And every generation it lessened a little bit more. And I can unequivocally say that my cousins and I are significantly less miserable and fucked up than our parents and grandparents. And in this golden land, I think that is saying a lot. We are educators, therapists, scientists, environmentalists, public policy advocates. There are a few staunch capitalists that got thrown in because it happens. But for the most part, we are okay. And Joaquin did get scholarship money. And he did go to college. And Russia is still messing around with its military in places it shouldn't be. And I have no idea how the shipping rope business is doing, but I'm assuming it's okay too. When you get to a new place, if you're lucky, you find someone who's been there just a little longer who can share their time and skills and kind of show you the ropes. But I think we know that things have really worked out in some capacity if amidst a ton of the broken systems that we live in, if someday you or your children or your great-grandchildren get the chance to empower someone else to believe that there's actually a way to remove a few of their own knots. Thank you.